Welcome, everybody, to our Wednesday night version of GIM Radio. It's July 30th, 2014. And tonight, Bob and I are honored to have Tom Campbell as our guest. Tom Campbell, for many of you that have explored this topic that we're going to get on to as far as, you know, why we're here, what is this universe that we're in. Anyway, Tom Campbell has a website, mybigtoe.com, and he's a former NASA physicist, author, and he has 3 books out of the My Big Toe trilogy. One of them is The Awakening, the other one is Discovery, the other one is Inner Workings. He's appeared on many radio shows and has many videos on YouTube of his personal appearances and lectures. It is an honor to have him here as our guest. So let's give a warm welcome to Tom Campbell. Welcome, sir.
Well, thank you, Rich. It's my pleasure to be here.
It is ours. And Bob is online here too. Bob, are you there, man?
I'm here.
Okay. Tom, we have a lot of ground to cover tonight. What exactly is My Big Toe? Can you explain that to our listeners, and also maybe give just a tiny background of yourself, sir?
Okay. Well, My Big Toe is the name of the trilogy that I wrote, and a ToE is an acronym for Theory of Everything, and it's a physics term. Einstein started the first ToE that was called that, Theory of Everything, and he called that Unified Field Theory. That was his ToE. And he worked on it for about the last 25 years of his career, and he did not solve the problem. He was not able to come up with a theory of everything. Now, a theory of everything in physics speak means an overarching theory that explains everything in physics, at least explains all the material world. So at the time of Einstein's day, the problem was that you had relativity, which Einstein was the one that authored that, and you had quantum mechanics, and the two were philosophically incompatible. So they had a good idea that there must be something bigger, some higher order theory, if you will, that would explain both of them. Okay. Because relativity explained some of it, and quantum mechanics explained other parts of physical reality. And they had a philosophical conflict at their basic assumptions, but neither one explained it all. So the idea was there's a big theory, a theory of everything that would explain them both, and therefore explain everything physical, all the physical interactions. Well, mine is a big toe because it has to be their little toe. It has to explain all the physics, but it also has to explain the subjective as well as the objective, and explain consciousness as well as, you know, physical matter. So that's what a big toe is. It's a theory of everything that really is everything, not just the physical world.
Right. Bob, is that you clicking away there?
No. I'm here.
Okay.
No.
All
right, it's gone now.
That was weird. That was really weird.
We'll have to edit that out, I guess. Well, no, this is live. We don't edit anything out. It is as it is.
No, that's right. This is definitely live. And anybody that would like to call in and pose a question, please give us a call at 760-259-2350. Tom, what is this world that we live in, that we perceive? I mean, you know, I can tap on my tabletop here and it seems solid, but the thing is that actually when you get down to the atomic level of things, get into the quantum physics of things, or quantum mechanics, things kind of go kind of fuzzy there. So you know what is this world that we live in here, man?
Well, if you go back to Newton's day, you'll find that Newton saw reality as a big clockwork. In other words, if you knew all the initial conditions, you could compute, what was going to happen next. If you knew where you are, if you knew your velocity, you knew your forces, you knew everything that would affect you, then you could predict what was going to happen in time. And they called that the clockwork view of the universe, the Newtonian view. And at that point, we believed that there was a physical causality between any 2 points. So you start with point A and you end up in point B, then there's some physical causality to get there. So if you are, if you're standing at point A and then you're now standing at point B, you had to move. You had to go through space in a certain amount of time, and that there was something, a force was actually making you move. So there was a physical causality between any two states. Then we got to quantum mechanics, and quantum mechanics basically says that's not true. There doesn't have to be a physical causality between any two states. Indeed, they find in quantum mechanics that reality is probabilistic. It's probability. Things are described in terms of their probability of being in state A or state B. And you can change from one to the other as the probability changes. So it's a different kind of view of the world. And that was first understood in a series of experiments called the double slit experiment. And in the double slit experiment, and later when we got more sophisticated at doing this experiment, we have a thing that basically also looks at time as well as position, and they're called erasure experiments and then delayed erasure experiments. And what that means is that you do a double slit experiment and you send particles at two slits, and they act like waves and interact with each other unless you measure which particles split, and then they act like particles. And then we found out that you could do this experiment, measure which slit they were going through, expect them to act like particles, but then after the experiment was done, basically erase the data. And when you erase the data that you took that determined what slit they went through, then you get a different result if you hadn't looked at it. Now, that's the delayed erasure. And these are experiments that have been done thousands of times by, physics departments, all over the world. So these are facts. And that then tells us that reality isn't at all like Newton thought it was. It's a probabilistic reality. So let's take this little particle, the electron. Oh, yeah. The reason we're able to talk to each other is because we have electronic equipment that's sending electromagnetic waves, pulses through computers, from you to me and to Bob. And that enables us to make the connection, and then we have an electronic gadget that's doing the recording, digital recording of the analog audio.
Right, but
all of this works on electricity, which we're told is just a flow of electrons.
Right.
So we think electrons are real because, there they are. Look at what they do.
Right.
On the other hand, you have to realize that at the micro level, there really is, we don't measure individual electrons. All we know is the probability of electron being a particular place. We measure the effects of things. We heat up a cathode at real hot, and then we notice that the current will flow from one plate to the other, and we then come up with a model that says electrons are little chunks of mass with charge. But that's just a model. We have to realize that we shouldn't take our models but so seriously. You see, it's just a model. It's not a fact.
Right.
The fact is the effects that we measure. The model is that we say, well, let's assume that it was done by this thing, and we'll call it an electron, and it has mass and charge. Well, the problem was, back in Newton's day, we did these experiments, And we believed our models. We thought our models were facts. And then we do quantum mechanics, and we find out they're not like that at all. Now, today in physics, they'll consider electron a point with the properties of mass and charge. Now, that may sound, well, isn't that the same? No, that's not the same at all. It's just information. And this information has the property of mass and charge. And it exists at a point. So that's the way we see the world today. And physicists have been coming more and more. In the last decade, they've gone from, when I first wrote my books about a decade ago, myself and one or two other people on the planet, as far as I knew, were the only ones who said this is a virtual reality. In other words, our physical reality is a computed reality, like a simulation. And there were, a couple of physicists and a few other people, philosophers, who had come to this conclusion. And myself, I came through it from my own experimentation in a larger consciousness system. We'll get into that later.
Okay.
But in any case, that was not a very widely held view in physics. Today, it's almost the opposite. The very large percentage of the working physicists today will agree that our physical reality is fundamentally just information. It's a computed virtual reality. And why? Because that's what the data says. When they do the measurements and they do the science and experiments, it turns out that the best way to model the results isn't with little particles of mass that have charge, but as points that have the properties of mass and the properties of charge. In other words, it's just information. So that's where science is headed. Now, it's not entirely there yet. You'll find physicists, particularly old ones, who still, kind of see this our reality as entirely physical. But the motion in physics, where the momentum is building, is in seeing our reality as virtual, as a computed reality, because this then solves all these quantum mechanics problems with a new view. So the Newtonian view fails to explain the results of the experiments. And the Newtonian view then becomes a subset of a bigger view. And that bigger view is able to explain not only the old Newtonian view, but also the newer quantum mechanics view. And that is as our reality is information. Now, that's a big step for most people. Reality is information, because we feel that this reality is very solid. Well, it is solid to us. But if it's made up of atoms are made up of electrons and nucleons, and all of the things of which make up this solid world are really just probability distributions, you see. So the big stuff is made up by the little stuff, and at the root, it's probability. But up at the macro level, it feels solid, and it feels like Newton all along. Things do work like Newton said, but that's not really what's going on, under the hood. That's not the basic. Right. So that's kind of a little digression on kind of where we are, the nature of reality being virtual, as opposed to what we all kind of believe at the gut level is that it's physical and hard stuff.
Well, I mean, even those models have changed, because when I was in school, I mean, we were taught that the atom is basically a nucleus, and the electrons, that the model looked like a mini solar system. Okay, but now talking to my son a couple of weeks ago, I mean a couple of days ago, that's not what's taught in school now. That you have a nucleus and then there's a electron cloud. Okay, right. So these models continually change.
Sure, but that electron cloud is not actually a cloud of electrons. People tend to make that assumption, but that electron cloud is a probability cloud.
Of where an electron may appear at.
Right, of where an electron might be. So right. The cloud of electrons isn't a bunch of little electrons flying around making a cloud, like a cloud of gnats or something. It's a probability cloud. And if you see pictures of that, they usually make it darker denser in and around the nucleus, and then it gets lighter and lighter gray as you move out away. And that's just showing that in and around the nucleus, the probability of it being there is higher than the probability of it being further away. Wow. So that cloud is a probability cloud. The electron is a probabilistic entity, not a physical entity. Right. And our whole world is built up of probabilistic entities, not physical entities.
Well, that's you're being up to date is one of the main reasons that Bob and I are just thrilled to have you here. Plus, what you have brought to the table in theories and things. And Bob and I are we're laymen here, okay? So but even in our younger days, I mean, we've picked up physics books, and I've had a subscription to Scientific America, the whole deal, and I kind of started to drop out of the whole, trying to keep up with things when they came out with the string theory, because I had some real problems with that thing, and then I just realized, okay, nobody knows what they're talking about. And I just kind of, I just kind of stopped. Bob, you haven't had a chance to say that, so please, man, come on into this conversation.
So if I'm understanding this correctly, then matter is information that has been created by probabilities, which can then be seen and experienced within our consciousness reality. Would that be a correct statement?
Yeah, that would be correct. It's not so much to say that matter is created by probability, because then you see probability as like a factory that makes matter. It's just that matter is described as a probable entity. There is no matter. There's only information. It's not that information somehow makes matter. It's just that there is no matter. And here's the way to kind of get that. If this is a virtual reality, then it should work, and it does work very much like any virtual reality, because there's certain attributes that are nature of a virtual reality. So I would say look at a virtual reality. Virtual realities have been employed for 40 years to train pilots, because airplanes are expensive, and sometimes if you're a pilot, you only make one mistake, and it's fatal. So before you get up in a $50 million airplane and learn to fly it, you sit in a trainer, and that trainer is basically a virtual reality flight trainer, and it models all the dynamics of flight and all of the functions of the particular aircraft that you're flying. So we've had virtual realities for a long, long time, and now the computers are faster. We have a lot of recreational virtual realities, things like World of Warcraft and The Sims, and I'm sure there's bunches more. Since my children grew past that and moved out of the house, I don't keep up on all the virtual reality games anymore, but so World of Warcraft and Sims are kind of where I left off, and that's what I refer to. And most of us are probably familiar with those games, whether we play them or our kids play them. But our reality works the same way. So let's talk about a character in The Sims. Okay, now a character in The Sims, has a lot of the properties that we do. They live in houses. They can't walk through walls. They have to go through doors. If you have a sim character in a swimming pool and there's no ladder, the sim character will drown because he can't get out of the pool. It's the only way they can get out is a ladder. So we look at that and say, well, that's just a model. Well, it is. It's a model of our reality. That's why it works the same way our reality works, because they're trying to mimic or emulate our reality. But how do they do it? They do it with a rule set. They create a rule set, and that rule set, for the most part, is represented by the kind of physics that we have in our reality. That's why the sim characters can't walk through walls. That's why they can't run but so fast, jump but so high. They're limited as to what they can do based on the rule set that runs the game in the server. Okay, now a Sims character, as far as the Sims character is concerned, that wall is solid. It can't get through it. If it walks up and the door is locked, then it can't get through the door. It's stuck. Well, now, how could that wall in a Sims program be solid? We know it's just information, right? The Sims character itself, the Sims body is just information. Well, there's a rule set that says that the body can't go through a wall or can't go through a door. So because that's the rule set, then that's the way it plays out. The Sims character walks up and walks into the door, they'll just bounce off of it. If he hits the door hard enough, it'll probably hurt him. So that's the way our world works too. We walk up the doors and we can't walk through them because there is this rule set in our simulation. And this rule set is, our physics. Well, at least we've learned some of the rules in the rule set. We call that science, biology, chemistry, physics. It's all people trying to dig out the rules in the rule set that our virtual reality simulation that we call our physical universe is based on. So it works the same way. Now, if you're playing a Sims character, you are its consciousness. You see, it's just a body. We call that an avatar. Okay, the avatar is in the reality frame of Sims, and it has to abide by the rule set of Sims. It's generated by a Sims server, a Sims computer. Okay, now the consciousness is you, the player, with the keyboard and the monitor or the mouse, and you make the decisions. You decide whether you want to go into the house or go out of the house or get in the car or walk around the block. All of those things are your decisions. You make choices. That's your role in the game, is to make choices, but you have to only make choices within the rule set. You can't say, okay, Sims character, flap your arms and fly away, and the Sims character won't do it because that's not part of the rule set in the Sims game. Now, here we are the same way. Our bodies, our physical bodies, are avatars. They're just data. We are consciousness, and we are the player, if you will. Our physical body is the avatar, and we, the consciousness, get to make all the choices. How we feel, what we do, how we react, our intent, where we go, and all of those things, but we can only make choices that are within the rule set that defines this physical universe, virtual reality. So you see, that's the way to look at it. You look at our reality just like it's a Sims game or a World of Warcraft game, and you see it has all the same attributes. We think things are solid, doors and walls, they're solid. Why? Because that's the rule set. The rule set says, that was Newton's first law, right? That no two objects can occupy the same point in space. That means you can't walk through a door, because you and the door can't both occupy the same points in space. Newton's law, part of the rule set. So solid objects can't be walked through. They're solid. That gives the definition of what solid means. It's just that rule. So here we are. We are an avatar, and as far as our physical arrangement, we're in a virtual reality that's data. That's our physical universe. But we are a individuated unit of consciousness that are playing this avatar and making all the choices. And why are we doing this? Because the thing that's real here is the larger consciousness system. That's a real thing, you see. Right. What is virtual here is our physical universe, our physical bodies, the door, the house, the rocks, the trees. All of the physical stuff is just data. The electrons, the nucleus, all of this is just information, because that's all physical stuff. And once you see reality like this, then a lot of things that used to be impossible to understand suddenly make good sense. That's why physics is moving in that direction. That's why the idea that our reality is just information is, I don't know, every week or two, I see another physics paper written by somebody that claims that virtual reality is what they need to assume in order to explain their results. So it's just an idea whose time, has come.
Right.
And that's kind of the way to look at it. So if you look at it like any other virtual reality, then a lot of things make sense. So one of the things that never makes sense in the old paradigm, which is that physical reality just is, and that is they talk about the Big Bang. Okay, the Big Bang is how our universe, our physical universe, started. It had a very high temperature, high pressure, a lot of energy in a tiny spot, and suddenly that spot is let go, and it can expand and do whatever it does according to its initial conditions and a rule set. And what happens is it expands, and there's gravity that pulls gases and things together, and you get planets, you get suns, and you end up with our universe. It's evolved. Okay, from this Big Bang, it evolved forward. Well, where did this tiny ball of high pressure, high temperature, plasma come from to begin with? How did it get there? If there was no physical universe before this, then it certainly didn't come from our physical universe, did it? Because our physical universe hadn't evolved yet, hadn't started yet. So where did it come from?
Well, see, that's one of the questions that Bob and I have been on the path for probably over a year. Well, for me, it's been
well, sure,
longer. I mean, we've explored, all the esoteric writings, some Marians. There's a lot of information even in the religious texts. I mean, even though they're not truly religious,
sure.
but they try to, but they try to explain, what started this whole process. And
right. Well, the point is you can explain it from a physical viewpoint. You see, if you try to explain it in terms of physical things, you can't, because this physical universe didn't exist. There was no physical universe. So it couldn't have come from the physical universe because the physical universe didn't exist to produce it. So you have this problem in logic that says it has to come from elsewhere.
Well, you see,
not from the physical universe, because there was none. So if it came from elsewhere, well, where's elsewhere? And why did it suddenly start like that? Just how did it get those initial conditions?
Okay, that is the $25,000 question. Okay.
Well, you see, when you have a virtual reality, that's a simple question. Let's look at that guy in The Sims. He starts to go back and look further and further back in time, and he's a Sims character, right? He's the avatar. And he gets to a certain point where there was no Sims. It just suddenly occurred. It's like 1 second there wasn't anything, there was no Sims reality, and the next second there was a Sims reality and had all kinds of stuff in it.
Right. Okay.
Well, how did that happen? Well, somebody punched the run button at the server and started to compute Sims.
Okay. So this is one of the topics that Bob and I have talked hours about. Is that I think one of the laws of thermodynamics is that everything wants to remain, that everything wants to remain equal. That what we've talked about in the past is that perfection, true perfection that's talked about in religious documents or whatever else exists in zero. Okay, that zero basically contains infinity and all probability. Everything is within zero. Everything's within infinity. And what happened is that a one came out of infinity, and that's an error. One, our the way that we look at this thing is that one is an error of zero. One should not exist because one is definition. Okay, and true perfection, cannot be defined. Okay, this world that we live in is definition, and it's an error. It's because there's so much. I mean, how much energy does it take to keep these trees up and these plants in place and the sun flaring? And I mean, there's so much energy being drawn out of this, infinite source that one of the laws of thermodynamics, says that this should not exist, that everything should return back to zero, back to infinity, back to perfection.
Yeah, well, Rich, the reason that you have this problem, like how did it stem? How did we get this one when we had zero and so on? It's because you believe that there is a physical world. You see, you're not understanding that the world is virtual and it's information. You say, what about all the energy for the sun and the trees and so on? Well, what about the trees that are in Sims? What about the energy for those trees? And what about the sun? It gets day and night at Sims. Sun comes up. What about the energy of the Sims sun? You see, it doesn't take energy in our view of it. It's just information. It's just data and a rule set. It doesn't require any energy if it's only data. You see? Okay. So the thing is, if you say that a one must exist because physical reality must exist, you've already created an assumption that's going to trip you up. You have to say that basically what happened is that before the Big Bang, the program was sitting there ready to run. You had initial conditions were set. You had a rule set. And when the run button was hit, just like in The Sims, the computer started to compute. What happens to these initial conditions of all that high energy, high temperature plasma? What happened, when you let time go? When the run button hit and the computer starts to do the simulation, then we start to have a physical reality at that point. And so that's the way it would be in a virtual reality. Now that's the way it is. You see, that's one of the ways that that this reality is virtual, because all virtual realities just start. They don't start from themselves. In other words, the Sims didn't compute their own reality. It has to be computed from outside the Sims. The Sims couldn't start their own reality. It had to be computed from outside, the Sims. And it's computed in the Sims server. Okay, the Sims server is not part of the Sims reality. The Sims reality is where the little Sims characters walk around and go in and out of their houses and have dinner and have jobs and children, and all of that happens in the Sim reality, and the server necessarily has to be outside of that reality. And the Sims world started when the run button was pushed. Now, in our reality is a little different. You see, Sims was programmed. Every tree, every blade of grass in Sims, some programmer had to write it there in code. Now, in our case, we start with initial conditions, this very high energy, high temperature, high pressure plasma, and a rule set, which is basically all the physics, how things exchange energy, and then the run button is hit, and it starts to evolve. The logical consequences of having all that pent-up pressure and temperature in a spot starts to evolve according to the rule set. It's not that every blade of grass and tree has to be programmed. We start at that point and let this simulation evolve according to the rule set. Now, that's how our world got generated. So eventually you end up with suns and planets and cells and those things. That's where Darwin takes over, and then those things all evolve and evolve until they end up with us sitting here having this conversation. So it's not that all that's programmed. It's just evolved from the rule set. Now, you couldn't have a Sims do that, because you could start out with a Sims and then let it evolve. That wouldn't work, because it's not that kind of a reality. That's the big difference between the Sims virtual reality and our virtual reality, is that the Sims is programmed and ours it's just initial conditions in a rule set, and it evolves.
Okay.
So then the physical reality is just information. That sun and all of that energy is information, you see, and it has an effect according to the physics, and its effect is that it, has temperature. Temperature's just a number with it's information, it's data.
Okay.
And we have that effect, it warms us, it does all this stuff, and we can calculate, how much energy it has based on our physical, concept of energy.
Right.
But it's all information and data. So look at it in terms of living in an evolving physical system in a computer. The server, just like the SIM server, and that server can't be inside our universe. It has to be outside our universe. The consciousness cannot be inside the universe, has to be outside. See, where are you in the Sims with your consciousness? You're not inside the Sims universe. You're outside the Sims universe in your own physical reality, and the Sims universe is inside the computer, you see. Okay. So our consciousness, who we are, talking now, making up these sentences and making these sounds, acoustic vibrations, and so on, we are a consciousness. We exist outside of the physical reality because that's the way consciousness has to be. Consciousness is not inside, and our avatar is now flapping its lips and and making the sound come out of the diaphragm across the vocal cords, and is producing this according to the way we have evolved here, in response to the rule set.
Exactly, and I could have done a lot better with my avatar than I've done so far. Bob, please, man, I've been hogging up here, so.
Okay, since this is based on probabilities and a rule set, does the initial rule set, does it act somewhat like an artificial intelligence with the ability to learn? Hence, the initial rule set itself evolves within the system?
No, it's not like that. The rule set basically just defines how particles interact with each other, how things can connect, how energy can be passed from one thing to another. Basic rules like gravity, thermodynamics, electromagnetism. These are basic rules, and our universe then evolves according to those rules. And it did happen to evolve a solar system like ours and a sun and a planet like ours, and then it was probable, again, you have a lot, the way things evolve is that there's a lot of random opportunity, and then you get just the right things happen together at just the right time, and you something different, something new. Okay, that's the way biology works, and then that something new thing with time and random process can develop something new, and you ended up then with people. Okay, now we avatars are living in a virtual reality, just like the sim characters. Okay, but our consciousness is outside of this reality. So it's not that consciousness had to develop from the rule set. Consciousness is outside the physical reality. The rule set creates the physical reality. So consciousness is what created the server in which this physical universe, virtual reality, exists. Our physical reality also exists in a server, just like the Sims reality exists in a server. And that server then is a product of consciousness. That's the other. That's the outside of physical reality. And I call that the larger consciousness system. So basically, consciousness is the only thing that is fundamental and real. Physical reality is information. It's a virtual reality. And we are individuated units of consciousness playing this virtual reality game. And there's a reason why we're doing that. And there's a point in it why it needs to be that way and so on. But, we don't want to get too complicated too far. So go on with your question.
Well,
maybe I helped, or maybe I made it worse.
Tom, let me interject this real quick. Okay, now we have these rule sets. We have these forces, gravity, electromagnetism. It just goes on and on and on.
Mm-hmm.
Now that information has always been there. I mean, gravity has from the very start has basically been there. The speed of light has been there. All these rules.
Right. That's why we evolved the way we did. That's why we ended up with a solar system, a sun, and a planet, right, because of gravity. Plus, there's a lot of other rules that made it evolve this way.
Right. And there was theories back when that you can't travel faster than the speed of light, but now there's questions saying, well, there may be some things that actually can, I guess what my question is that there's this information out there, these rule sets, and as we learn things, we discover new rules that we didn't know before. That's why it's now a electronic cloud that's that's within a atom and not a fixed set of electrons and whatever
right
else. So as we progress as intelligent beings, that we discover these new rule sets, and soon, hopefully, we will be able to transport a person from this planet to any place within the solar system. Once when we learn the rule set of how to do it. So, but it's not like we're creating these rules. They're already out there waiting for us to discover them, to make
sure
use. Okay. Now, how much of the physical universe do you think that we actually see? I mean, that we as human beings, can. I think that we only don't see the infrared spectrum. We don't see the cosmic spectrum. I mean, so that we as how we interact with each other and what we see as reality.
Sure.
How much? What percentage of the universe do you think that we actually see that we say, okay, this is real?
Well, what percentage? How much of the sim set does a sim character see? It's that sort of thing. We only can see as far as we can see, right? I mean, it's you have a visual, which is light between the red and the violet. So we have sensitivity to electromagnetic radiation in that frequency band with our eyes. But besides that, we look with radio antennas, and we look with gamma detectors, and we look with all kinds of things so that we can see with our tools, even if it's not with our eyes. But we can only look so far, right? Because we get to a point where, the light is originating, say, from a sun that's so far away that it basically can't be seen. So what happens is we get bigger and bigger telescopes that can collect smaller and smaller amounts of light and then actually make a signal out of it, and then we can say, oh, look, we can see all this stuff. Well, how do you determine what it is you can't see? That what would be there if you had more sensitive instruments? You see, so we just look as far as we can look, which is limited by our ability to see, our technology. And we have no idea what's beyond that. So the idea that we say, well, the universe is so many billion miles, around and da-da-da-da-da, well, that's just as far as our instruments can tell. We don't know what's past what our instruments can tell. Well, it's because it's just information, you see. How big is the Sims world in miles? And you say, well, that's silly. The Sims world isn't big in miles. The Sims world is generated in a computer. It's not actually anything at all. It's just a bunch of electrical signals inside a computer. It just exists virtually, not physically. Well, our physical world is a virtual reality. It's just like that. So there really isn't any dimension or space to it that's fundamental. All of that dimension is just calculated. So the Sims world has dimension. The Sims gets out. His house is only so big. He gets out and drives his car, and that only goes so far. And you can watch the streets go by and the houses go by as he drives in his Sims car. So you can say, well, there's distance inside the Sims thing. Well, it's just calculated distance. Same with us. It's just calculated distance. How can the universe keep expanding? Well, that's easy. The computer just continues to compute bigger numbers. Then the universe is expanding. Mm-hmm. You see, you don't have to say, well, how does it expand? You know, where does it get the new volume from? How does it make new space? Is there a space factory that makes space and stuffs it in our universe, and now our universe is bigger? Well, no, it's just bigger numbers in a computer. Take a computer and write the equation for a sphere, and then let the radius,
keep expanding now.
Yeah, just keep going, and pretty soon you can have a number that's much bigger than our universe.
Okay,
it's just a number.
Okay, great. Bob, please.
In this virtual reality, does the program rewrite itself? Are there data overwrites that create possible glitches?
Well, it's a rule set, and the rule set's followed, and our reality evolves as that rule set defines it and as the evolution takes it. This is not a deterministic simulation. This is a probabilistic simulation. So it's not like Newton looked at a deterministic universe. Everything was determined, remember, through a physical causal chain. Everything was determined by that physical causal chain. Well, this is a probabilistic simulation. It's not determined by physical causal chains, but it looks like it is in the macro world because that's the rule set. The rule set defines these rules, and according to the rule set, we have changes. You see, so the rule set gives us the illusion of a solid world, and it has an illusion of being a causal chain between events, but it's really a probabilistic reality, and that's what quantum mechanics discovered, is that at the roots of our reality, you have probability. An electron doesn't really exist. It just exists in probability. That's what explains how the double slit experiment works. Once you see that reality is probability, then the explanation of how the double slit experiment works is trivial. It's real simple. So we have the rule set, and the rules could evolve some, but it's the rule set that is determining what we get. Just like in the Sims. The Sims rules can evolve such that when the game started, maybe there were different rules, and they decided, well, that's not so handy. We really do want people to be able to flap their arms and fly in the Sims. That would just be a real novel thing there in the Sims. Everybody could fly around by flapping their arms. They could change the rule set, and that would be possible. People would flap their arms, and they'd lift up off the ground and fly. You see? Well, that's because the programmer can change the rule set.
Right, but
now in our virtual reality, our reality is not a programmed reality. It's an evolved reality that evolves according to a rule set. Could the larger consciousness system make tweaks to the rule set? Sure, it could make tweaks, but once you got a working system, you don't want to keep tweaking it because it creates discontinuities in the gameplay. Suddenly you never could flap your arms and fly before, now you can. There's like these big unexplainable inconsistencies in the virtual reality. Well, in a game like Sims, nobody cares. They say, okay, this is version 6 or something, now we can fly. But in our reality, that creates a problem. Our reality has a certain function and purpose, and having big discontinuities in it kind of defeat that purpose. It doesn't have the feedback that we need. It isn't consistent like a good schoolhouse should be. So, no, we don't see a lot of major changes in the rule set. But now, can we as consciousness do things, make the gameplay so that it doesn't always follow Newtonian worldview? Yes, we can. We can modify things so we don't always have to follow the rule set, but there are ways that we can do that. There's limitations. We can only do that at certain situations.
Well, if we can find a different set of rules, we as players can't create rules. Okay, we are kind of
right.
I mean, we
That's
can't.
Right. We're stuck with the rules,
right.
But fortunately, these rules are probabilistic. You see, they're not physical. They're not a done deal. They're not absolutely immutable. They have to work just like Newton said. Those aren't the kind of rules. These rules are probabilistic. And when rules are probabilistic, there's room to wiggle because you only have a probability of something happening, only probability that an electron is in some specific spot. And because the probabilities can change, you can modify probabilities to a certain extent, and from the outside, nobody notices, any difference.
Okay.
You see, so it's a major concept here that the rule set and the simulation we're in is a probabilistic simulation, not a fixed deterministic simulation.
Okay. Well, I want to talk about a little bit about time and now, because that is, in my opinion, one of the biggest factors in this simulation. Okay, I kind of view time as one of those Tesla coil things that has these two balls on it, and then there's this arc that sparks in between them. That one of them is charged positive, the other one's negative, and it creates this arc across it. So I'm kind of viewing the present as that fleeting moment as the future as the future becomes the past, that we exist only in that microsecond of the future becoming the past. And that's why when they get these electron microscopes out and try to look at the edge of an atom or the edge of a steel, that everything starts to turn to a wave, because we're in a constant state of transition.
Yes.
We are not fixed. Nothing in this universe is fixed. So we exist in that arc, in that
right,
light.
Right.
In that
We only exist in the present moment. And again, let's look at The Sims. You, the consciousness that is the player of the Sims game, you can only make decisions at the present moment in Sims. You cannot make decisions in the past because the past is over. You can't say, well, I should have put a ladder in the swimming pool. Now all my kids drowned. I'm going to go back and change that. It's done. You can't go back and change that. You can have more kids, or you can, get rid of your swimming pool, but you can't change what happened. That's history. It's over. And you can't fix the future to be any particular way. You just have to make your choices in the present. That's exactly the way it is here. So we interact. We're in this game, and we make choices in the present moment. Now look at The Sims. Where does time come from in The Sims? Time in The Sims is day and night. Guys go off to work. They come back from work. They have dinner. They go to bed. There's time. Where does the time come from? Well, the time comes from the server. The server is run by a clock. It's got this outer time loop, and what happens is that it calculates the state of everything now. And
right.
Then people make their choices. I'm gonna get up off my couch, okay? I'm a Sims character sitting on a couch, and I'm gonna get up and walk. So when I do that, then the next time cycle, the Sims calculates everything, and because I've intended to get up, I start to raise up off the couch. And the next time cycle, I start to go a little more. And it's just like, because the motion is smooth, that means it calculates at least 20 times a second, because the human eyeball sees things changing every 1/20th of a second. To us, it's continuous. That's why we watch a movie. And that movie, when we watch the movie, that movie is really a bunch of still shots that are all run together, but the shots are coming at us, the still shots are changing. Probably a good movie would be 1/30th of a second. That's a better quality movie. If you had it 1/10th of a second, the movie would be like the old-timey movies where everybody moved in real jerky motion.
Right.
So what happens is that you have the Sims, and let's say 20 times a second, it updates so that we, the players, see smooth motion. And it's every 20th of a second, it recalculates where everybody is. And my intent as consciousness to get up off the couch tells the computer that that's what my character is going to do, and it starts computing it every 1/20th of a second. It computes it and computes it and computes it, and what I see looking at my screen is that my avatar slowly rises up from the couch, and my hands move and my legs move and all these things happen, you see, because the computer is keeping time. It's that outer time loop that runs. And I don't know what Sims is. It's pretty smooth. It may be every 20th of a second, or maybe every 100th of a second would make it very smooth. It calculates where everything is next. That's the same with us.
Yes.
So time is very fundamental. Time is not, time is the fundamental outer loop calculation. So the physical reality universe that we live in gets recalculated for us, it's real small because this is a much bigger computer and server than the one that does Sims. So it's about every 10 to the minus 44 seconds.
That's okay. Good. That's
really small, okay, and that's called Planck time.
Right. Okay. And that's what I was trying to get to. That our present lasts. What was it? 1 to the minus 40?
Yeah, it's about 10 to the minus 44 seconds. Okay, that's just rough. Okay. I say 44 because that's an easy number to remember.
Okay.
It's in that order of magnitude.
Now, see, this is what fills me with awe. Okay, is that in that fraction of a second, as we're in that arc from the future to the past, we're in that arc. In that thing. Mm-hmm. But within that arc, within that split second of a time, the whole universe is reconciled.
Recalculated. The next move. So you have a planet or an asteroid, and it's zinging through space at 100,000 miles per hour, and every delta t, every little time increment, it gets a new position.
Exactly right. Now, if that isn't, awe-inspiring to anybody that can understand what's happening, throughout the whole universe in that split, in that fraction of a second, that every atom, every motion, everything is reconciled. Okay, that is probably the most thing that it's beyond belief.
Yeah, well, you have to also understand that the computer has a much faster clock. This is just the clock in the virtual reality. So let's say the Sims clock in the virtual reality is once every 100th of a second. Let's just make that because it's a good round number. So every 100th of a second, the Sims map gets updated where everybody is. If the car's driving down the street, then every 100th of a second, that car gets computed a new position. Not very far, just a tiny little change in position, but that gets, and it gets sent to your computer, and your computer takes that information and puts it in a pixel. So that's that clock. But the computer itself doesn't just work at every time at 100th of a second. The computer processor might be doing millions of calculations a second, you see? So it can do lots and lots and lots of calculations in lots and lots of time. It's got millions and millions of cycles before it has to update that map. Right. So the computer has all the time in the world to figure out what's going to happen next on that SIMS map. And ours is the same way. The larger consciousness system then has its own clock, just like the computer has its own clock, which is the clock speed of the processor. The consciousness system has its own clock that is much, much, much faster, if you will, than what we calculate here in our physical universe.
Perfect.
So it has all the time in the world to decide what the next delta T in this old, slow, physical reality is going to do. That's how time works.
But it's the delta of every atom, every electron, every quark, everything in the whole universe is reconciled in that split second. Reconciled and accounted for, and it is logged as truth.
That is, except, remember now, this is not a deterministic simulation. So you don't have to deterministically look at every atom and every quark and every electron. All you have to look at the probability of where these things are. And you can deal with whole groups of things just in terms of their probability. So you don't have to really compute every detail because this is not a deterministic simulation. It's a probabilistic simulation. And that's why it's a probability, simulation, a probabilistic simulation, is because if you had to deterministically update every minute subatomic particle, you would need a huge amount of processor to do that. Because there's so many billions of these particles. But you don't have to do that because it's a probability-driven system, not a deterministic-driven system, and you can say the probability on all of these things is so, and until somebody looks at it, it doesn't matter. Now, here's another thing to think about. Okay. When you're doing SIMS, what is SIMS to you, the consciousness? It's a data stream that flows out to you and every other player in SIMS, right? And that you interpret that data stream as the SIMS map. That data stream gets to your computer and ends up lighting up pixels, various colors and various intensities, and you look at those pixels, and that's your idea of the map. You interpret those pixels as the SIM reality, okay? That's the way that works. Well, it's the same with us. In our virtual reality, it's only sent out to all the players. All the players get which is all the individuated units of consciousness, get a data stream, and they get that data stream and they interpret it as this physical reality, okay? So now when no sim players are there, let's say that this is a real off day for SIMS and not a single player is logged on to SIMS. So what about all that stuff? What about all those cars and houses and stuff that's going to be there when the players come? Will be exactly where they left them. There are no players. Do you think the computer is sitting there computing houses and cars driving around and everything? No, it doesn't have to compute anything until a user shows up. When a player shows up, it starts to send that player a data stream. It only calculates data streams. It sends data streams to players. If there are no players, there's no data. As soon as there's a player, it starts sending that player data. If there are two players, those two can interact. It starts sending them both data that will have their interaction. We're the same way. You only have to worry about things that people are measuring, looking at, because that's in the data stream. Everything else, the quark, the electrons, and all the rest of it, unless a scientist is looking at the effects of those things, you don't have to worry with them at all. They're not in anybody's data stream, so they just don't exist. You see, it's a probabilistic simulation, not a deterministic simulation. That makes it 1 billion times more efficient and less trouble to compute. Okay. So the SIMS doesn't have to compute atoms, right? They don't have to compute electrons and quarks and so on. That's not the way they work. They're programmed, not evolved.
Okay.
So they don't have to bother with that. But if nobody is a player, if there's nobody logged on, Sims don't have to calculate anything.
Okay. This would be a great time because I think we're getting ready to transition from the physical to our spiritual side or our conscious side. But we have a caller here, so let's bring them on and let them ask a question.
Okay.
Go ahead, caller. Please identify yourself and ask your question, sir. Hello.
Well, this is G-Pon here, but I'm only here to listen.
Okay, G-Pon. Well, please ask
Ooh, I meant to say
question.
G-Pon. Did I mess that up? I guess I did.
What's that?
I was having trouble. The audio was dropping out, and so I called in just so I could listen without the audio dropping out. Okay,
well, Deepan, would you like to ask a question while I have you on the air here?
Well, let's see. I wrote some questions in the text here. I understand the analogy of how the Sims could work as our virtual reality, or it's an analogy. But I'm curious as to why we think that consciousness is outside of our reality. Why does it have to be, or is there evidence that it is, or is there some logical reason to think that consciousness really is outside of our reality as opposed to being perhaps inside of it, let's say inside of our brains? And I would like to just really not speak anymore and listen to the answer.
Okay. Well, the reason for that is that it's logic that tells you that reason. If we start with the idea this is a virtual reality and science is pushing us that way and kind of verifying it, that's what it looks like. Given that it's a virtual reality, then consciousness has to be outside. Now look at the Sims. Where is consciousness in the Sims? It's not your Sim character that's conscious. The Sim character is not conscious. It's just the avatar. You, the player, are conscious. Now, you, the player, are sitting in your living room or sitting at your desk. You're not in the Sims reality. Sims reality has a bunch of Sims characters walking around, living in Sims houses and doing Sims jobs, right? That's the Sims reality. You, the player, have to be outside as consciousness. You're their consciousness. You make their choices, and you exist outside of the Sims reality. The Sim character, because it's a virtual reality, is just an information-based video, if you will. It's a simulation. So the simulation is not where the consciousness is. That's why it has to be outside the system. It's because if we start with the assumption that this is a virtual reality, like I say, that's where science is going. You start with that assumption, then if this is a virtual reality, consciousness has to exist outside. The brain is just a virtual brain, just like the virtual body. And the brain is not computed unless somebody cuts open a head and then the brain's computed, because the only thing that's computed is what goes into data streams, you see. So the brain is just information as well. The brain doesn't store, process anything. All of that's done in consciousness. It only sets the constraints on what can be stored and what can be processed, just like in the Sims. So if somebody comes up and hits you in the head with a pipe and you have brain damage, that changes the constraints of what you can do, how you can function. Maybe you become paralyzed on your right side. Well, the rule set says that if you took that hit like that it would damage your brain, and the probabilities is that you would be paralyzed on your right side. So we look at that, and then the consciousness player has to deal with that. Same with your Sims character. Somebody hits your Sims character in the head with a pipe. The rule set in Sims would create some kind of damage, and the player would have to deal with that because that's the way it is. So it's the fact that it is a virtual reality, that consciousness has to be outside the reality, because if it's a virtual reality, it's a virtual brain. The brain is just like the virtual electron. It's just probability calculation, and it's part of a data stream when somebody went ahead and looks at a brain. That's how virtual realities work. They're simulations.
Let me add that just a little bit. Under how I see it is that if our present only exists in that 10 to the minus 44 power of a second, if we were locked in to now, that we cannot plan for, I could not say, well, I'm going to go make me some coffee and go into the kitchen and make me a cup of it, because if my consciousness was locked into the physical side of it, then I would be locked into just the present. Okay, I couldn't plan. I couldn't take the leisure of sitting here and thinking about, okay, well, that coffee is going to taste good. I'm going to go grind some stuff. I could not do that if I was locked into just the material side of it, because I would only exist in that fraction of a
right. You would be your body is a calculated avatar.
Right.
Your brain is the same thing. Your brain is just a calculation when looked at, and when nobody looks at your brain, then your brain's not computed.
Right.
It's just a probability that you have one.
Right.
See, things go on as if you had a brain, just because that's probable, according to the rule set, that you would have one, and that's all it takes. It's just probability. You don't have to actually physically get in and simulate brain tissue and neurons for every thought.
Right.
It's a probabilistic simulation, and
right.
You're exactly right. If you are a virtual character, then you don't have an intent to get up and get coffee. It's your consciousness that has that intent.
Right. Plus, since I'm above this, I have the leisure time to contemplate. Okay. Well, I'm going to make coffee, and then I'm going to go do this, and you know what? I should call my mom, and all this other stuff. If that's giving me leisure time. That's putting me up above time. That's putting me up above this fraction of a second that I exist in. Okay, that my mind is up above that time. All those constraints.
It's exactly the same that I was saying when I tell that my Sims character is going to stand up. It's sitting on the couch. It's going to stand up and walk across the room.
Exactly right.
See, I have the intent. I'm consciousness. I make that intent. And as I make that intent, the server changes how it calculates the position of my character so that my character smoothly stands and walks across the room, because that's my intent.
Exactly
you see, and how do I tell the server to do that? Well, I have to click a key or do something with the mouse. I have to move my mouse cursor so the guy follows wherever I put the mouse cursor. Something I have to tell the server what my intent is.
Exactly.
And when that server gets my intent, then it executes that intent so that in the virtual world, the Sims character gets up and walks across the room.
Okay.
So we do the same thing. We are consciousness. We live outside of the physical reality because that is a logical requirement of a virtual reality. And our intent tells the server, the larger consciousness system, how to move the virtual things on the board, on the map.
Exactly. Bob, you got anything here, man?
Yes. If our consciousness being outside of the virtual reality, but our avatar, which is experiencing inside of the virtual reality, a virtual reality that is non-deterministic and is based upon potential, it would seem to me that the consciousness would be in almost a state of war with the avatar in the interpretation of data streams.
No, you see, the avatar isn't experiencing anything. It's you, the consciousness, that's experiencing everything. The Sims character doesn't experience getting up off the couch and walking across the floor. The Sims character is just information created by a server that gives an image that appears to get up off the couch and walk across the floor. The Sims character is not conscious. It's not experiencing anything at all. It's just information computed in a simulation. It's the consciousness that's having the experience, not the avatar. The avatar is just data. The reason you're having the problem is because we are ingrained with this idea that this physical reality is the real fundamental reality, and that we experience. It's us, the body. We identify with our bodies as being us, and we have that down at the blood and sinew level of our belief systems, and it's just really, really hard to think in terms of this being a virtual reality. We keep trapping ourselves with these beliefs as the way the world works. Well, we believe that we're having the experience. So our Sims guy then, and the analogy would be having an experience, but no, that's not it. Our avatar, our body, is not having any experience at all. It's our consciousness that has the experience.
But would not there be, as any game player who gets really locked in and is into playing their sim, and they begin to assimilate themselves with their game personality?
Yeah.
I would certainly think that would alter the consciousness outside of the game.
Sure, absolutely, you're right. And that's the whole point of this game, is that the players get to interact with each other. They get to, be helpful to each other or hurtful to each other. They do whatever they do, just like they do in The Sims. All the different players on The Sims get to interact with each other in this virtual reality, and they get to make real choices. The consciousnesses, the individuated units of consciousness, are interacting. They can learn. They can grow. They can, find things out. They can change. This is a life-changing, a consciousness-changing game through this interaction. And that's the whole point. The consciousness is indeed changed because he identifies with that character, and when somebody in that virtual reality, irritates him or steps on his foot or spits in his eye or something, then he has to react to that. And how is he going to react to that? Well, he makes a choice. He can react to it in a dozen different ways, and it's his choice of how he reacts. And however it is, that plays out. He gets feedback back from that and might find out that his reaction was really a very poor choice, or maybe it was a good choice. From that feedback, he learns, and he grows up and learns how to better play the game. You see, so you're right. That is, if you identify with that character, you're making all the choices. You change and grow because of it. Same thing with those flight simulators where the pilot was. The pilot was in a simulator, and in this simulator he takes off his plane, and he has an engine go out, and he has to figure out what to do. So he feathers an engine, and he does this, and he does that, and he drops his altitude, and he has to call for Mayday, and he has to find an airport. He's got all this stuff he has to do, and he's got like 10 seconds to do it in, and that's his experience. And he learns how to fly an airplane and deal with those kinds of emergencies in his simulator. It changes the pilot. It's the consciousness that's being changed and modified and growing up. You see? You can't put this guy out in a $50 million plane and blow up one engine to see what he'll do, and he only has 10 seconds to figure it out or everybody dies. That doesn't play well in the real world. So you do that in a simulator.
Okay. I see that you're also a pilot, right? You?
No, I'm not a pilot.
Really?
I've flown airplanes a little bit, but I would never go so far as to call myself a pilot.
Okay, well, we have one more caller here, so let me bring them in. Caller, area code 817.
Yeah, hi there. This is Ardent Dragon.
Hey, Ardent Dragon. How you doing, man?
Doing good. I wanted to say hi to Dpong/G. I got the name thing that he went through. But, no, my question was on dream state. Like when I have a dream, I've had this happen several times over my lifetime, is these deja vu experiences, and sometimes I've actually caught myself where I'm replaying the same scene over and over again, and when I wake up, that imprint's left over, and I figure out, well, what is this about? And I dismiss it, but then it shows up again 2 or 3 years later as a deja vu. Like I've done this before, and it's from a dream. Mm-hmm. So how would this compute into what you're talking about?
Okay, the way that is likely to work, and again, it's probabilistic, so you can only kind of find out the way that it's likely to work. There may be 5 or 6 different ways it would work, but let me give you one scenario, and that is, first, your dream reality is just a different virtual reality. It's not a lesser or greater reality than this physical reality. It's just a different reality frame, and it has a different rule set. Okay, now, in this physical reality, we as consciousness are playing in this game, and there's a certain amount of infrastructure in the server that is required in order to compute this virtual reality game we call our physical universe. And one of these things is a probable future database, which is computed so that the system, the server, if you will, kind of knows what's coming and can prepare for it. And there's a historical database, which is everything that,
that's happened.
That has happened, and it's everything that could have happened, and the probability that it might have happened. The future probable database is everything that might happen, and the probability that it will happen. So you've got these databases. When you are in this other reality frame called your dream state, and actually you can do this also from an awake state here. You don't have to be in a dream state, but in a dream state, we kind of are freer in a sense. The rule set's a lot freer, and we don't take our beliefs with us when we're in this dream state, because we know, in a dream state we can fly, we can teleport from place to place. We do all kinds of things in a dream state that we can't do here. So we're kind of more open to a larger, less restrictive rule set, and you can be getting information from the future probable database. And it's only a probability. It's not necessarily that these things must happen because you've seen it. It's just they're likely to happen. Now, the second, kind of a different way that can be, is that the larger consciousness system, the reason we're here is because we're here to grow up. We're here to make good choices and learn from those choices. We're here to decrease our entropy, become love, all these other things we haven't gotten to yet. That's the point of being here. And the larger consciousness system wants you to grow up. That growing up will be speeded up if you understand the game you're in. If you understand that this is about making choices, lowering your entropy, spiritual growth, becoming love, all these other things. That is the point of this game. And you will do better if you realize that that's the kind of a game you are. So the system could replay these things for you in a dream just so you'll remember them. Like replay it 10 times so this guy will remember it, and then we can arrange for this to happen. And when I mean arrange, I mean it's a probabilistic simulation. You can tweak things within the natural uncertainty in the system and kind of make things happen that all blend in perfectly, and it doesn't look like there's any discontinuity in the simulation. And that may have been done for you just as like a wake-up call. Look, this reality is bigger than you think. It's not just physical. Look at this. You have these dreams. The dream gets you to remember it by repeating it, and then it happens. My gosh, this is not just a physical reality. There's something else going on here that's really weird. That helps you open your mind to keep a picture, which will probably lead you to study or think about things, which will lead you to a bigger picture and perhaps help you grow up and meet your purpose here. Right. So that's probably what's going on and why those things happen. It's just a a part of the way the system works to optimize the learning potential of all the people in it.
Okay. Arden Dragon, if you don't have anything else, I'm gonna mute you, or you could hang up or whatever else. But anything else, sir?
Oh, well, my end? The only thing else I had is sometimes I've also had dreams where a part of the body feels pain, a pain sensation, and I've actually awakened to find that I'm on top of my arm or finger, and that pain that was experienced in the dream is actually a result of my physical body being contorted because I'm sleeping wrong. And if those are two different realities, how come those are interacting when they shouldn't be?
Well, those two realities do interact. They interact a lot. A lot of times, something that you hear or sense while you're asleep. Let's say you're asleep and phone rings or something. You may incorporate that ringing phone into your dream. So they are separate. They are different realities, but it doesn't mean that they can't interact. There's data that can be passed back and forth between them, and indeed, you can become lucid in a dream. It's called lucid dreaming, where you then let your intent take over, and you can start to create your own dream, or you can look around and what's going on in the physical universe from that state. So the two of them are connected. They are separate things. It's almost like you had the World of Warcraft and the Sims. And the Sims characters, when they were asleep, could go, hang out or interact with people over in the World of Warcraft game. It's just a matter of having the two servers connected. It's not that difficult a thing to do. Two separate games, two separate rule sets, but you can share data between reality systems without a problem.
Excellent. Arden Dragon, thank you for the call, man.
Yeah, thank you.
Bob? Anything else?
This is fascinating.
Okay. I hear you, grandchild.
So basically what you're really saying is that if we're not in this virtual reality, then I suppose we're not having any experiences. So where are we? Where is our consciousness when we're not in this virtual reality?
Well, you're in a different virtual reality. You have to be in a virtual reality or you don't have any experience. If you are in an experiential mode, if you're experiencing something, then you're in a virtual reality. So when you're no longer in this physical reality, your body, your avatar dies, right? Because of the rule set. Avatar gets old with age, body gets dysfunctional, avatar dies. You, the consciousness, don't die any more than you die when your elf dies or when your Sims character dies. It doesn't affect you any. So the consciousness then will be in a different virtual reality, be out of this one and into a virtual reality that is a transition reality so that it can get its bearings and get back in to the physical game because they're there for a purpose. They're there to grow up. That's what they do. They're trying to lower the entropy of the system because if they don't, the system will eventually dissipate and die. So it's this larger consciousness system, just like any system, is just trying to survive, just trying to keep on keeping on, and we are a part of that process. We lower our entropy.
Okay.
And for the system. So it just is another virtual reality. Now, if you were not in a virtual reality, you wouldn't have any experience because what character would you be playing? If you're not logged on to any virtual reality, what's going on in that virtual reality? Nothing, you see. So when you're not playing Sims in World of Warcraft, you're in virtual reality. It's physical reality. When you're not in physical reality, you're in the transition state, which is a virtual reality for people getting out of this physical reality to get reoriented. Or if you're not in any of those kind of experiential things, you're just like in a big chat session. You can exchange information with other entities just like you could in a chat, and there isn't any physical body kind of thing going on because that's a very very loose rule set. There's only a couple rules that have to do with communication, just like in a chat room. You can chat with people. You don't notice their bodies. You can assume that they have one, but that's not the point. The point is that it's just consciousness talking to another consciousness. Well, that's like the simplest of all virtual realities, where the only rule set are the communication protocols. You don't have a lot of other data going back and forth. And if you're not in that, then you're just basically nowhere. You have no experience. You're not experiencing anything. You have no free will. You're just a potential player. Okay? Somebody who could be played, but you're just a file in a database someplace. So you don't have any experience. You only experience inside virtual realities.
Okay, now, Tom, that gets, and we're going to run out of time here, even though we have 27 minutes left. Believe me, we're going to chew this up real quick. That gets to the big question of why. Okay, because here we are in this material world, and it is beyond human comprehension to ever understand the whole truth, the whole for us to ever understand this reality here. There's no way for me to know how many atoms are in this cup here, how many atoms are in this table that this cup sits on, even though it is all truth, because it's all here and it exists. There's no way for us to ever, as a human being with our limited, eyesight, feeling, smell, touch, this whole, with our sensory input, to ever understand this world that we're in. It's way past us. So why are we here then? I mean, in this world that we can never understand the truth of it all.
Well, we're here to experience.
Why?
That's why we're here. We're here to have experience. We're here to grow up. You have to understand why we're here. We have to look a little bit about this larger consciousness system. This larger consciousness system started out as a potential, a self-aware potential, and that's just kind of an assumption going on. We know consciousness exists because we are conscious. Just like we know that there was that first cell in the Darwin theory of evolution because we're here. So we wouldn't be here if there wasn't those first cells in order to evolve into what we are. So you kind of know because we're here that must have existed. So you kind of start with that assumption. So we start with an assumption of some kind of very primordial consciousness that is just barely aware that it can discriminate between state 1 and state 2, or state 1 and state 0. Let's do that. It'll make it easier. Then it evolves, and gains in complexity. That's called emergent complexity. It's another viewpoint of evolution. And as it evolves, it needs to increase its information. It's an information system, you see, so it needs to increase the content. Otherwise, it dies. By dying, it dissipates. In other words, all of its bits become random. It no longer exists. As its bits are structured, that means their entropy is lowered. They're not random. That's information. So if it loses information, it eventually dies. It's just random bits. Nothing there, no system. So the system wants to evolve to lower entropy states. Lower entropy states give it complexity, makes it more useful, things that it can do with it. That's what it does. So now, just like evolution's evolution, the process is the same, because this reality, in the bigger picture, this reality is a fractal system. So we see the pieces of it work just like, the smaller pieces work just like the bigger pieces. So evolution in the physical world what happened was the systems there evolved. They were single-celled things, and they reproduced. There were lots of single-celled things, but in order to improve their survivability, then they found that they could have a lower entropy, more complexity, more survivability and capability if they grouped up and worked together and became multi-celled things, you see? And the multi-celled things then found that they could be more survivable and have lower entropy, thus more power, if you will, by grouping up again and having specialized cells. So now you can have a liver and a heart and a brain and bone, and all these specialized cells make up one more complex, lower entropy thing that is more survivable, has more energy, more power, can do more things, more degrees of freedom than it did before. Well, this cell of consciousness, if you like, does the same thing. It needs interaction, create information. It needs to lower entropy. It can do that. It can make more complexity if it breaks itself into pieces and interacts with itself. That's like the single cell breaks itself into pieces, goes through cellular division, and now it has something to interact with. Now there's more potential there for novelty and for information than there was before. So it goes through a similar kind of process. And it evolves, this larger consciousness system evolves into the system we have today, which is clever enough to build virtual realities so that pieces of itself can experience in virtual realities, make decisions, make their complexity greater by making, better decisions, and that lets the whole thing evolve. Now, what's the connection here between good decisions and lower entropy? Well, you have to understand that if you have a whole bunch of things interacting with each other, you have a social system. If you have a social system, then its interaction is the key. How do you interact? Well, in a social system, what is the lowest entropy? What is the most profitable interaction in a social system? It's cooperation, caring, working together. All of those individual cells that then made a multi-celled creature, they all had to cooperate to do that. If you have each cell just off on their own doing their own thing, you don't get a multi-celled thing. They had to come together, cooperative, and each cares about the whole. Now, that is the path of evolution, you see. So the larger consciousness system does the same thing. It breaks into lots of pieces, just like the single cell did. Those pieces interact with each other, and if they interact with caring, with cooperation, and we'll call that love, then the system grows, it gets more productive, and entropy goes down. If it interacts in the opposite way, which we will call fear, then the system starts to disintegrate and come apart. Because why? Fear is all about self. Love is all about other. Fear dilutes trust. Without trust, you have a hard time getting cooperation or economic systems or anything else. If you have things based on fear, then each one's trying to grab as much as they can grab and keep holding on to that as long as they can because it's all about them. That's a very suboptimal system. You see, that never grows. That never becomes. That's just a whole bunch of bacteria, right? That's a whole bunch of individual single cells all fighting with each other for their own survival and their own, advantage.
Seems that we live in the world of bacteria.
So that's what we're doing here. We're consciousness. We're in the system. We're here to grow up, to make good choices, to become love, to become caring and cooperative. And as we do that, we create more complexity, more information, more potential, more powerful connections, and the whole thing grows. If, on the other hand, we do the opposite, if we move toward fear, then we are increasing entropy. There are more random bits than there were before. That's not as much cooperation or caring or anything like that, and the system starts to die, starts to dissipate and come apart. So that's our job. We are individuated units of consciousness set here to experience and interact with other individuated units of consciousness to make choices. And if we make those choices toward the side of cooperation and love and caring and compassion and those things, then we lower our entropy. We grow up. We evolve the quality of our consciousness, and the whole system grows because we're pieces of the system. Exactly. We're it and it's us, you see. Excellent. So if we do the opposite, then we de-evolve and we're a drag on the system. Okay. So that's our purpose. That's what we're here to do. We're here to experience. Now, we could just have stayed where we were without the virtual reality and just had like a big chat room where it's just consciousness to consciousness passing back information. Well, you don't learn much very quickly that way. You have a much more effective schoolhouse if you have consequences, if you have feedback. In a big chat room, there are no real consequences. There is no feedback any more than what somebody wants to give you. You know, there is no natural feedback. So the better schoolroom is one that has a tighter rule set. The interactions are defined, okay, by the rule set, and the consciousness can interact, and if it interacts with caring and compassion and love, then life gets good and things work out great. And if you act with fear, you have problems, you struggle, you're in a soap opera.
Absolutely.
So that's the nature of this reality.
Oh, I've been in enough of those. Bob, please jump on in.
Okay. How does my dog fit into this? How does a pet cat or a deer or any of the wildlife, because they certainly do exhibit what could almost be interpreted as having a form of consciousness.
Well, I'd say they absolutely do have a form of consciousness, Bob. They're conscious critters just like we are. They evolved here from the rule set just like we did, and they are doing the very same thing we're doing. They're having experience, making choices, and either evolving or de-evolving because of it. They're just doing it a lot more slowly because they have a limited, the way they evolved on this planet, you know, now we're talking about Darwin's evolution, right? They don't have the same capacity for choice and for exercising free will as we do. So consciousness comes in all forms, not just dogs and cats and horses. It's bumblebees, and all kinds of critters. If any kind of a thing can have a zero or can have a finite decision space, that is, they can make choices. They can choose to do this or that. They have intent. They can make a choice. Then that thing has free will and has a consciousness, and that thing can evolve that consciousness based on the choices they make. So they're not a whole lot different than we are, except their capacity is much lesser. So their decision space, the amount of choices that they can make, is a smaller set. That's the main difference. So we're all, everything here that has a finite decision space is in the same boat we are. They're all trying to grow up.
Okay.
So what you're saying is that this dog has a consciousness outside of this virtual reality.
Absolutely. All consciousness is outside the virtual reality, yes.
Yeah, so this would be so basically as this dog would evolve, it could possibly as it learns, it could actually assume a human avatar over time?
Sure. If it grows up to where it needs more challenges and can make more difficult and complex decisions, then it could then come in as a player of a human avatar. Consciousness, individuated units of consciousness basically play a player that is at a level that gives them kind of the right level of challenge for them to learn. If they came in too early, they'd just be totally overwhelmed by the complexity of a human avatar. So a dog avatar may be just the right thing for this consciousness. There's enough challenge there.
Gotcha. Okay. Good explanation.
Okay, Bob, excellent question. Tom, now I'm sitting here right now in this room with this microphone, with this computer in front of me, with this table. I got coffee cup, a glass of ice water. Now I am here, and everything that is around me is a result of consequences. Somebody had to make that cup. Somebody had to make that glass, make this computer, and for me, even being here right now, I am riding a wave of past consequences. Okay, and it goes back to France in 14 whatever. I am tied here. I am here now because of all that of that whole chain that goes back to the very beginning of time.
Right. That's the nature of evolution.
Okay.
Evolution is a chain of events. Things evolve. Everything evolves. It's not just, that people or biological things evolve. Technology evolves. It's like that glass that you're drinking. One time, humans didn't have glasses to drink out of. They didn't have coffee. All of this stuff is the evolution of technology. Everything evolves. Social systems evolve. And, who you are now, what you see around you, and the interactions that you have available to you to learn from and to make choices from, all have evolved over, from the beginning.
I have the pleasure of being here because, two people back in, 500 BC had sex. Okay? If they didn't, chances are that I would not be here. I am tied directly to a whole chain of events that go back to the very beginning.
Right.
Okay? So everything that we see, everything that we have is a result of that. So what you're saying is that the future, is really just pure potential.
Exactly.
That the future can be anything that we make it.
We can create it. Okay. Absolutely, because it's our choices. See, the choices we make in this delta T will determine the choices we have in the next delta T.
Right, or else the choices that our kids have and our grandkids.
Sure.
And in the future, 2,000 years from now, that reality, what they have in front of them, will still be tied to what we do right now because we're in that chain. Okay, so what you're saying is that one of the main purposes that we're here is to learn to love and to change so that our future changes, that we are in command of what our future is. Or
what we need to do is not so much that we're in command of it, because everybody makes their own free will decisions, and it's that we are, if we do it right now, if we act with love and compassion, then those that come after us will have more choices. They'll live in a richer world with a greater decision space, more choices and to work from. If we do the opposite, if we interact with fear, then they will have less choices. They'll live in a more constrained, fewer degrees of freedom for the choices that they make. So it's whether or not we want to expand and grow, or whether we contract and dissipate and die. It's up to us.
That's my problem now, is that right now this world that's being fed to us is actually a majority of it is fear-based. There's a bad man under every bed. We got to go through all these. They're just instilling fear. It's just a mess. Bob, I'm going to give you the last question here because I know we're going to run out of time, my friend.
Gotcha. Tom, this amnesia that we're somewhat born into this virtual reality with. How does that play with? Do you think there are other avatars out there who have broken through some of this consciousness, and they have what would amount to cheat sheets in this simulation, and that they would?
Good question, Bob.
Yeah, that's true. You have what happens is that it's not that the avatar breaks through, but the consciousness playing that avatar grows up. As he grows up, he has a greater decision space. Okay, that means he's more aware of what's going on, more choices. That's an expansion of his awareness. Now, eventually, once you understand how this game works, and you have this past database with everything that happened and everything that could have happened and the probabilities associated with each, and this future probable database, there's a lot of information there. There's a lot of information coming out of other virtual realities. We're not the only virtual reality. We have that dream reality. There are other virtual worlds like ours, other virtual universes, if you like. And all of these are available to someone who understands enough about how the system works that they can, switch from data stream to data stream and explore other things. So yes, all of this is available. It's not so much a cheat sheet as it just is. The more you learn, the easier it is to learn more. When you study your arithmetic when you're in 3rd and 4th and 5th grade, so you really understand, addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. What does that allow you to do? That allows you to take algebra, and algebra allows you to take calculus, and calculus allows you to take a whole host of other things, each one being more and more complex, lower entropy, more extended logic, and it gives you more insight, more ability to do things and create. So it's like that in life, not just like math, but you grow up, you get a bigger set of things you can deal with. And yes, that works. It is just like that. So here we are, and as Rich said, it's a fairly sad place as far as all the fear that we have, but there are those who have grown up enough that they have access to the larger consciousness system and can kind of come and go and get around as they will. It's there. It's not that you have to be special or get some special training. All you have to do is grow up. You just have to become love, let go of the fear, and you have access. It's a very simple thing to say. It's not such a simple thing to do because we live in such a fear-based culture that to outgrow that fear is a very challenging thing.
Yeah, I mean, there's a bad guy underneath every bed. You're gonna burn in hell forever and ever and ever. I mean, it's just all fear just to control you. Tom, please give our listeners your information where they can go to get your books and your DVDs and everything else, man.
Yeah, this has been a real, we've talked almost 2 hours, but it's just a scratch on the surface of this. As you can imagine, there's a lot of very large paradigm shifts here in order to really understand how all this works, and it's not something that's easy to pick up in 2 hours.
Right.
But I've done lots of workshops and lots of interviews and lots of discussions, and they're all on YouTube. If you can just go to Google and Google My Big Toe or Google Thomas Campbell, and you will see it'll come right up at the tops of the lists. Some of the stuff will be YouTube, but if you want to go directly to YouTube, it's www.youtube.com/TWCJR44. TWCJR44. Okay, that's my ID on YouTube.
Okay.
So that'll take you straight to the site, but it's easy to get to on Google. Now, I've got a website, which is www.mybigtoe.com. And it's an old website, and we're in the process of redoing it, but it's got a lot of information there. And if you want to know what's happening as far as where I'm going to be talking and giving a program next, you can go to www.youtube.com/TWCJR44. mbtevents, MBT being the initials of my big toe. So mbtevents.com. And that's a website. Those folks that run that website basically do my organizational stuff, and they know where I'm going to be when. So those are the sites that you can go to. Now, I've written this trilogy of books that explains it, and you can get that for free on Google Books. It's as soon as I published these, the very first publication that came out got put on Google Books in entirety. 100% of it is there and available to read. And what's nice about the Google Books one is you can search. You know, it's an electronic book, so you can search for things that you're interested in. It is a little old in that I haven't updated it for a long time. It's the very first printing that came out, but there's not been that much difference between them. Now, if you're interested in the science primarily, what this has to do with physics, and remember I said that you have to be able to make a little toe first. You have to be able to do better physics with this as well as better metaphysics and better philosophy. If you want the physics, go to the YouTube. I do more of the physics there than I do in the books. If you're interested more in the metaphysics and the philosophy, then start with the books.
Okay.
As far as YouTube goes, probably the best overall summary is a workshop I gave in Calgary, Canada, and you just look up Calgary Workshop, and you'll see Friday's an introduction, Saturday all day is theory and understanding how reality works, and then Sunday is how do you use it, applications, how do you use your mind to heal, how do you use your mind to remote view, to lucid dreaming. What is all that? What does it mean, and how do you figure out how to do it, and some exercises. That's your exercises to learn how to get around in the larger reality. So that would probably be the best one to start with.
Tom, you have been just an excellent guest, and I hope you have had as much fun as we have here. And
it's been a good time. I hopefully I was able to say things that people understood.
I think so. And I truly hope that you'll come back on, and you're absolutely right. We've only still scratched just the surface. I would like to have you back on to instruct our listeners on maybe how to use these tools, and I think it'd just be a great follow-up show.
Okay, we can do that, and when you get this one ready to publish, let me know so I can put it out on YouTube.
Okay, and I have promised to send you the link to the show, and I will definitely do that. I want to wrap this thing up under our time constraints, so I'm going to wrap this thing up. Bob, thanks for being here and being my wingman. Just great, man. And thanks for the people that called in. And we will see you all next week.
Tom, thanks so much for appearing. It was great.
Oh, you're welcome, Bob. It's my pleasure.
Have a good night.
Have a good night, everybody.
Good night.